The narrator described how John Parker, a 38-year-old entrepreneur, sat in his sleek office staring at his investment dashboard, his chest tight with unease. The morning sun streamed through the tall glass windows, yet the numbers on the screen cast a shadow deeper than night. John muttered, "This cannot be real." His hand trembled as he refreshed the page again, but the red downward arrows mocked him. In an instant, years of trust in his financial advisor, David Harris, 45, a polished figure with a silver tongue, felt like a cruel illusion. John whispered, he promised safety, growth, loyalty, but the truth was unraveling before his eyes. The silence of the room felt deafening, broken only by the clicking of his mouse. The betrayal hit harder than the loss itself. The man he relied on had stolen his future. The narrator explained that John scrolled through endless bank statements, each line a dagger. He said, "Every transfer, every number feels like a betrayal." His chest tightened as he realized David had siphoned funds over months, not days. Thought crushed him. This wasn't a mistake, it was a calculated theft. His phone buzzed, the screen lighting with a message from his wife. Emily, 35, asking, "Are we safe?" He couldn't answer. His silence spoke volumes, a heavy pause where hope should be. John pressed his palms into his eyes, wishing to wake from this nightmare, but the figures on the screen burned brighter, undeniable in their cruelty. The narrator revealed how John tried calling David, but every ring ended in silence. He whispered, "Pick up, damn it," his voice cracking with fear. Each unanswered call deepened the abyss forming in his chest. Images of David's confident promises echoed in his mind. "Trust me, John, your money is in safe hands." Those words now mocked him like ghosts. The office felt colder, the walls pressing in tighter. He slammed his fist on the desk, papers scattering like broken dreams. Anger surged, but beneath it pulsed an overwhelming dread. If David had stolen this much, what else had he taken? The narrator shared that John sank into his chair, the weight of betrayal crushing him. He muttered, "I trusted him more than anyone." His reflection in the darkened window stared back like a stranger. Beyond the glass, the city buzzed unaware, while his world collapsed in silence. He remembered Emily's voice urging him to be cautious, her concern dismissed as worry. Now regret cut deep, sharper than loss. He whispered, "How do I tell her? How do I fix this?" Each question echoed without answer, swallowed by the hollow room that once symbolized success, but now felt like a prison. The narrator explained that John pulled open a drawer, revealing old investment brochures and David's handwritten notes. Each word once inspired hope, now it screamed deceit. He clenched the papers, his knuckles white, before throwing them across the room. He shouted, "How could you do this to me?" The echo lingered like a cruel reminder. The room grew heavier, silence pressing against his chest. In that moment, John knew this was not just numbers lost, it was trust shattered, a bond broken beyond repair. His journey for truth had begun, though the path ahead was cloaked in shadows. The narrator explained that John sat at his kitchen table that evening, staring at untouched dinner. Emily, 35, looked across with worried eyes. She asked, "Why are you so quiet?" He forced a smile but failed. His mind replayed the betrayal, each memory like a knife. He whispered, "Emily, I think David has been stealing from us." Her fork froze midair, her face drained of color. She said, "What do you mean stealing?" The words echoed with disbelief. John's voice cracked, "Everything we built, everything we trusted him with, it's gone." The silence between them grew heavier than the loss itself. The narrator revealed Emily's voice trembling as she said, "John, you promised we were safe." Her words carried fear mixed with heartbreak. John looked down, ashamed. He whispered, "I trusted him more than anyone." Emily leaned forward, gripping his hand tightly, her face pale yet strong. She said, "We can't let this destroy us. We need to fight back." John's chest ached at her courage, the sharp contrast to his despair. He nodded slowly, though doubt clouded his eyes. In that fragile moment, Emily became the anchor holding him steady in a storm of betrayal. The narrator shared that later that night, John sat in his dim study, surrounded by books and papers. He thought of his father's words, "Never trust too easily with money." He whispered bitterly, "I failed you, Dad." His reflection in the glass of a framed photo mocked him. Emily entered quietly, placing a cup of tea by his side. She said, "You haven't failed, you were betrayed." Her voice, steady and gentle, pierced his despair. John looked up, his eyes weary. He muttered, "I don't know if I can fix this." She answered, "Then we'll fix it together." The narrator explained that John opened an old leather journal where he kept notes of financial meetings. Each page carried David's promises, written with conviction. He whispered, every word a lie. His hand pressed hard against the ink until it smudged. Emily leaned over his shoulder, her breath steady. She said softly, "These notes are proof. We can use this." For the first time that day, John's eyes flickered with a spark of resolve. He realized the lies could become weapons. The storm outside rattled the windows, echoing the turmoil inside him, but determination began to rise. The narrator revealed that as the night deepened, John sat upright, no longer crushed but restless with purpose. Emily said, "This is not the end, it's the beginning." Her conviction steadied him like steel. He whispered, "I will make him pay." The quiet house carried the weight of their vow, a fragile unity forged in betrayal. For the first time, John felt less like a victim and more like a fighter. Outside, thunder cracked through the darkness, the storm roaring its approval. The long war had only just begun, and John was no longer afraid to face it. The narrator explained that John met his old friend Mark Lewis, 40, a loyal ally, at a quiet downtown cafe. Mark leaned forward and said, "You need to face the truth, John. David planned this." John's jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists. He muttered, "I can't believe I was so blind." Mark's eyes were steady, a reflection of loyalty and anger. He said, "You trusted him, but trust doesn't mean weakness. It means you still have a chance to fight." John's chest tightened with fear, yet Mark's words lit a fragile spark. Betrayal burned, but resolve flickered alive. The narrator revealed that John showed Mark the financial statements, each line a scar. Mark studied them carefully and said, "These transfers aren't random, they're systematic theft." John's voice cracked. "He stripped me piece by piece." Mark tapped the paper, his tone sharp. "This isn't just betrayal, it's fraud. He left a trail, and trails can be followed." John's heart pounded as fear collided with hope. For the first time, the nightmare carried direction. He whispered, "Then we'll track him down." The cafe noise faded, replaced by the sound of their silent vow. The narrator described that later that night, John and Emily sat together in the living room. Emily said, "You can't let fear paralyze you." Her tone carried strength, though her eyes betrayed worry. John leaned back, exhaling heavily. He muttered, "If David could fool me, he could fool anyone." Emily gripped his hand tightly, whispering, "Then, let's make sure he never fools anyone again." Her conviction pierced the fog of doubt. John's shoulders straightened slightly, the seed of courage rooted by her faith. Betrayal had left scars, but Emily's presence reminded him he was not alone. The narrator explained that John stayed awake past midnight, researching David online. Each article revealed praise for David's brilliance, every smiling photo a mask hiding deceit. John whispered, "How did I not see?" His screen lit up with news of David's latest charity gala. The irony clawed at his chest. Emily walked in, her robe draped loosely, saying, "He hides in plain sight." John's eyes hardened, his voice low, "Not for long." The glow of the monitor painted his face in cold light. Anger sharpened into resolve, his fight beginning to take shape against the shadows of lies. The narrator revealed that John returned to his office the next morning with new fire in his eyes. Colleagues noticed his silence as he locked the door and spread documents across his desk. He whispered, "You thought I was weak, David, But you underestimated me. The walls no longer felt like a prison but a war room. Emily's words echoed. Mark's loyalty steadied him, and the betrayal transformed into fuel. The red arrows on the chart still screamed loss, yet behind them glimmered the possibility of justice. John's journey was no longer survival. It was a fight for truth. The narrator explained that John sat in Mark's office, the blinds half closed, sunlight cutting across stacks of papers. Mark said, "I found something hidden in David's transfers." John leaned forward, his heart pounding. Mark whispered, "He's been moving your money into shell companies under his wife's name." John's face hardened, the truth more venomous than he imagined. He muttered, "So it wasn't incompetence, it was a plan." The room seemed to shrink, every detail sharper, more dangerous. Mark's voice dropped low. "He thought you'd never look this deep, but he underestimated you." The narrator revealed that John stared at the documents, his eyes scanning every damning detail. He whispered, "His wife, of all people." Emily, seated nearby, clenched her fists, her face pale with anger. She said, "This isn't just theft, it's betrayal on every level." John's voice quivered with rage. "He played me like a fool, but I won't stay one." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of discovery. The truth now had a face, and it was uglier than the loss itself. John finally muttered, "This changes everything. He'll regret underestimating me." The narrator described how John confronted the possibility of David's betrayal being deeper than money. He said bitterly, "He used our friendship as his shield." Emily's eyes watered but stayed fierce. She whispered, "Then expose him. Don't let fear stop you." Mark added, "People like him thrive in silence. You bring the noise and his empire crumbles." John felt rage twist into determination. For years, David had played the role of savior, but the mask had cracked. The path forward was clear. David Harris would face the light, and John would deliver it himself. The narrator explained that later that night, John paced the study, every step echoing like a drumbeat of war. He whispered, "Every dollar he stole will be his downfall." Emily stood at the doorway, arms folded, watching him burn with resolve. She said softly, "Promise me you won't lose yourself in this." John paused, his breath uneven. He muttered, "I already lost too much to stand still." The storm outside raged, rain tapping the glass, thunder shaking the walls. In that storm, John saw his own fury mirrored, and for the first time he welcomed it. The narrator revealed that John gathered his evidence into a single folder, his hands steady now. He whispered, "This is no longer survival, it's justice." Emily placed her hand on his shoulder, her voice firm, "Then finish what he started and take it back." Mark's words echoed in his mind, the truth now a weapon sharper than any blade. He felt his fear dissolve, replaced with fire. The betrayal that nearly destroyed him had become the foundation of his fight. John closed the folder with a sharp snap, his eyes burning with resolve. The war was no longer coming. It had begun. The narrator explained that John entered the gleaming boardroom, the walls lined with glass and steel. David sat at the far end, 45, dressed in his perfect gray suit, smiling like a predator. John's voice was steady but sharp. "You stole from me." David leaned back, chuckling softly. He said, "Business isn't personal, John. You should know that by now." The tension cut like a blade, every word heavy with history. John slammed the folder on the table, papers spilling across the polished surface. He declared, "This is fraud, David, and today you answer for it." The narrator revealed David's charm twisting into venom as he leaned forward, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Do you think anyone will believe you? I built your success." John's jaw tightened, his eyes burning. He replied, "You built nothing but lies." Emily entered quietly, 35. Her presence steady, her eyes fixed on David with disdain. She said firmly, "You preyed on trust, but you left a trail." The silence thickened, broken only by the faint hum of the city below. David's smirk faltered for the first time, a crack in the armor of control he wore so proudly. The narrator described how John spread the evidence across the table. Each page revealed transfers, shell companies, and forged notes. David's hands twitched as his mask cracked. John's voice rose. "This is enough to ruin you." Mark, 40, stepped forward from the corner where he had been silent, his voice calm but cutting, "And enough to put you behind bars." David's eyes darted between them, fury colliding with panic. For years he held control, but now it slipped like sand. John whispered, "This ends tonight." The boardroom no longer felt like his stage, it was now his trial. The narrator explained that David's calm facade shattered as his voice rose. "You think you can break me? I own this city." John stepped closer, his face inches away, eyes blazing with fury. He said, "You don't own anything anymore. You stole, and now the world will see you." Emily stood behind him, her hand steady on John's shoulder, her strength anchoring his rage. Mark's voice echoed, "The evidence is already in safe hands. Even if you run, you lose." The walls felt alive with tension, every breath sharp as glass. The confrontation had reached its breaking point. The narrator revealed that John slammed his hand on the table, his voice thunderous. "Your empire is built on lies, and today, it collapses." David's eyes widened as fear finally pierced his arrogance. Emily whispered, "It's over." Mark added, "Your name will be dragged through every court." John stood taller, no longer broken but unshakable. The betrayal that once crushed him now fueled his defiance. David's silence screamed louder than any denial. The boardroom, once David's kingdom, had become the scene of his downfall. John's chest rose with the weight of triumph and the cost of justice. The narrator explained that the boardroom confrontation ended, but John knew the aftermath had only begun. Reporters waited outside, cameras flashing like lightning. Emily, 35, whispered, "It's time they hear the truth." John, 38, straightened his shoulders, his voice calm. "Let them see what he really is." The doors opened, and the silence was shattered by questions hurled at him. He walked forward with steady steps, the folder of evidence clutched in his hand like a weapon. The betrayal was no longer private, it was now a war in the open, and John was ready to fight for justice. The narrator revealed that outside, microphones thrust forward as John declared, "David Harris is a fraud." Gasps spread through the crowd. Emily stood firm beside him, her presence unshaken. John continued, "He stole not only from me but from countless others who trusted him." His voice carried both fury and pain echoing across the steps. The reporters scribbled furiously, their flashes catching his determined eyes. Emily whispered, "You're not alone anymore." For the first time, the weight of silence lifted, replaced with the strength of truth spoken aloud. The world now bore witness to David's downfall. The narrator described that later that night, John sat in his living room, exhaustion heavy but spirit unbroken. Emily leaned against him, whispering, "You did it." He replied softly, "It's only the beginning." His phone buzzed with messages of support, strangers and friends rallying behind his stand. For years he thought betrayal had left him powerless, yet tonight he felt strength rising from the ashes. Emily smiled faintly. "This is our fight now, not just yours." John's chest swelled with both gratitude and resolve. Justice was still far away, but he no longer carried the burden alone. The narrator explained that Mark joined them the next day, carrying a thick envelope of files. He said, "The prosecutors have everything they need." John's eyes lit with relief as he took the papers. He whispered, "Then the law will finish what I started." Mark added, "He'll never recover from this." Emily's gaze softened as she said, "But remember, revenge doesn't heal, truth does." John looked between them, feeling the balance of rage and hope. The scars remained, but justice was now within reach. The storm was breaking, and light finally began to pierce through the clouds. The narrator revealed that John walked alone that evening through the city streets, the neon lights reflecting in his eyes. He whispered, "This fight cost me everything, but gave me more than I knew I had." The betrayal no longer chained him, it had forged him into something stronger. The people he trusted most stood by him, and that gave him courage. He stopped at a corner, looking up at the towering skyscraper, where it all began. His voice was steady. This is not the end. This is the rebirth. The night felt lighter, the future wide open before him. The narrator explained that John walked into the courthouse, the marble floors echoing with each determined step. Reporters lined the hall, but he ignored their shouts. Emily, 35, walked beside him, her hand brushing his arm for silent strength. John whispered, "Today the truth is spoken in full." His heart beat like a war drum, steady but heavy. Mark, 40, followed close behind, carrying the folder of evidence. He said, "Once this starts, there's no turning back." John's eyes hardened, his voice low. "I don't want to turn back." The doors loomed ahead, the weight of justice waiting. The narrator revealed that inside the courtroom, David sat at the defense table, 45, his once arrogant face pale and tight. John watched him carefully, the man who had stolen everything now reduced to desperation. Emily leaned close and whispered, "He looks smaller now." John nodded slightly, his voice calm, because the truth shrinks liars. The judge entered, and silence blanketed the room. Mark passed the folder to the prosecutor, who nodded with quiet confidence. For the first time, David's hand trembled. John sat taller, not as the broken victim, but as the man who had brought the storm. The narrator described the moment evidence filled the screen, each document projected for all to see. Transfers, forged notes, and shell accounts laid bare the betrayal. John's heart pounded, but he felt no fear. David muttered under his breath, "Lies, all lies," but his voice cracked with desperation. The prosecutor said firmly, "This is fraud, deception, and theft." Emily reached for John's hand under the table, her touch steady and grounding. Mark whispered, "This is the end of him." John's eyes never left David, burning with the fire of justice. He whispered, "This is the end of silence." The narrator explained that as the session ended, the judge's gavel struck like thunder. David's head dropped, his empire shattered in a single word. "Guilty." John closed his eyes, breathing in relief, the weight of betrayal finally lifting. Emily whispered, "It's over." Mark added quietly, "Justice caught him." John stood slowly, his shoulders lighter, though scars remained deep. He muttered, "This doesn't erase the past, but it frees the future." The crowd stirred with murmurs, some clapping softly. The man who once seemed untouchable was now broken, while John stood firm, forged by fire, unshaken. The narrator revealed that later that evening, John stood on his balcony, city lights glowing below. Emily joined him, wrapping her arm around his. She whispered, "We survived." John's eyes reflected the skyline as he said, "We lost money, but gained something greater, truth, strength, and each other." Mark called on the phone, his voice proud, "You changed more than your life, John. You changed the game." John smiled faintly, whispering, "Then let this be the start." The night was quiet, no storm, no chaos, only peace. The betrayal had ended, but its lesson would never be forgotten.